Greetings fellow citizens of Rome. Today we're going to make a special Roman dessert, something that was very partial to the Romans, a nice sweet little cheesecake, honey cheesecake. Now the inspiration for this initially came from old Max and Tasting History, but I've also used another site I follow quite often, Historical Italian Cooking. And so what we're going to do today is mainly using Mac's version of the recipe, but a slight variant according to, actually to be honest I don't know the guy's name who does Historical Italian Cooking. So we're going to cook a Roman honey cheesecake. So obviously apart from the honey and the cheese, one of the other key ingredients we want is some spelt grain. Okay, now this is an ancient grain. I think this is an einkorn variety, early form of wheat, if you like. And I've already prepared some of this. What I've got in a bowl here is 120 grams of it that I've pounded in the mortar, not so it's turned into flour, but so it's broken up a bit, and then it's been soaking for the best part of the day in water. Hence the reason I prepared this before, right? So we've got 120 grams of spelt that's been soaking. We're going to want 240 grams of plain white flour, 177 mils of water. Well, actually the water's what's gone in there, okay? And then about a tablespoon of olive oil, but to be honest, that doesn't actually go into this stage. Now there's several stages to this. First stage, which we want the spelt for, is to make the tractor, and this is like internal sort of well not really crispy, but layers inside. Okay, we're going to make an overall crust, which is just a flour and water crust, and then the filling is going to be some kind of soft sheep's cheese blended with honey, but I'll give you the quantities of that later. So this is from the only known surviving recipe that was written by Cato in the De Agricultura, which is essentially a cookbook written in about the 2nd century BC. Okay, the actual recipe, I haven't got the translation and everything here because it's huge, right? But it's actually to make a huge cake. So Max kindly, and actually so did the guy from Historical Italian Cooking, let's cut it down to something more reasonable. So the first thing we're going to do is prepare these inner layers. So I've got my 240 grams of flour, which I'm just going to put in a bowl, and then to that I'm going to add the spelt and the water. Okay, that's left, and we're just going to knead that into quite a firm dough. Now if it needs a bit more water, we can add a bit of water. Now this is obviously going to be sort of semi-crunchy, if you like, because of the spelt. Okay, and so all I'm going to do at the moment, and like I say, if I need a little bit more water, I'll add a little bit more water. I'm just going to knead this all together, and we're going to knead it until it's formed a nice smooth dough. All right, so I'm just going to do that. Okay, so here you go. Should get the slaves doing this, but you can't trust slaves these days, can you? So all I'm going to do now is, now I've got that all mixed together, I'm now going to divide that into 6. Okay, so 6 equal sized bits, and like I say, these are going to form sort of internal layers in our cheesecake. Now we're not actually going to cook these at the moment. Okay, what we're going to do is I'm just going to roll these into balls, and then we're going to, some of them are a bit bigger than the others, we're going to roll them out into discs. Now it may be that we don't need all of these. Okay, for that one's a bit small. We're going to roll these out into nice round discs. Now you're going to need to make sure that obviously the discs are going to fit in whatever pan you're going to cook it with, okay? Because it's going to be cooked finely. So I'm going to use this dish, okay? If these end up being a bit too big, I will end up finding another dish. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to roll these out into thinnish discs, okay? We don't want them too thick because the type of filling is not really going to soak into this too well, okay? Now, I'm going to roll all them 6 out, and then I'm going to briefly dry heat them on each side. I'm not trying to cook them, I just want them a little bit drier, okay? So I'm just going to get them rolled and briefly dry these out, if you like. So I'm just gradually drying these out, okay? But what I'm going to do now is take my dish that I'm going to cook this in, and I want some bay leaves. Now ideally it'd be nice if they were fresh, but I haven't got fresh ones. So what you're going to need, whether they're fresh or not, you're going to need some olive oil, and what we're going to do is basically we're going to, I'm just going to try dipping these in, but you might want to brush them, and we just want to put a layer of olive oil soaked bay leaves on the bottom where our cake's going to go, okay? We're going to put the cheesecake on top of this, okay? I knew one of them buggers to do that to me. Okay, so it's not actually going in the cake, but it should, if Max is right, it should infuse into, the flavour should infuse into the bottom, well, certainly into the bottom of the cheesecake, okay? So that's what I'm doing. I'm just doing a layer of oiled bay leaves that our main cake will sit on. Now, when these are done and I've got my base ready to go, I will then prepare the crust of the pie. Right, before we do the crust, actually, we're going to just do the filling. So I've got in there 790. I've got a soft cheese, okay, but you can have an ordinary like sheep's cheese. If it's a salty cheese, then it's recommended by Cato that you rinse it 3 times, drain it thoroughly. That helps soften it up. It also gets rid of all the saltiness, because obviously this is a dessert. We don't want the salt in it. So to that, I'm now going to add 255 grams of honey, which is about half a jar. Well, half of this jar anyway. And then we're just going to blend these two together. Almost there, almost there. There we go. So, we're going to blend them together, okay? And then it will be all ready to assemble once we've made our crust. Now our crust, like I said, is just a flour and water dough, and that dough, that flour water mixture, get in the end, it's 120 grams, again plain white flour, and about 59 mils of water. But the thing is with the water, it's best just to add it a bit at a time, because if you don't need it all, you don't use it all. Now it wants to be quite a nice firmish dough, okay? But we're just going to finish off, got one more tractor to do. This is all now blended, and then we'll make the crust and start assembling it. I've got my dish with my oiled bay leaves in the bottom. Now you're still going to want some oil, because each of these tractors we're just going to oil the top when we start assembling it, but we'll see that. So that's just about all mixed together. I said it was going to be a huge cake. According to the original recipe, it would have 4 pounds of flour with 2 of alica, which was a type of clay that they used to use as like a whitener. But we ain't obviously doing that. 2 pounds of flour for the bottom crust, 14 pounds of cheese, and 4 to 5 pounds of honey. Bloody big cake. Fit all the bloody Rome, I would have imagined. So like I said, 120 grams of plain white flour, in that goes. And then I'm just going to add about 77 mils of water, but I'm not going to chuck it all in just yet. And again, we're just going to knead this until it's a nice smooth dough. Okay, and then when it's just about right, we're going to roll that out. Now, this wants to be quite a thin crust because it's like it's going to envelop the whole cheesecake. Okay, need that extra little bit of water, and it's not. It's going to envelop. It's going to fold all over it. So we don't want it too thick. We don't want it too pastry hard, don't we? And everything's still sticking there. And it wants to be larger than the cake we're going to make, because it's going to, like I say, wrap round. So it needs to be bigger than them tractor before. So I'm just going to get this all mixed in together. All the flour off the sides, get it all mixed together, and then we'll roll it. So this now wants a fair bit of kneading. Okay, we want it a nice smooth overall dough. So I might have to just add a little bit of flour. It's a little bit sticky at the minute, but we're going to knead this for about 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, and then, like I say, I'm going to roll it into a ball, and we're just then going to roll it into a big bloody circle. Right, catching 10. So I'm busy rolling this out, and I just realised I didn't actually tell you what the Roman name for this is. And this is a bit of a weird one because it's spelt placenta, but it's actually pronounced placenta. If you watch Max's version, he says no one really knows for sure, but there is a good chance it was placenta because it originates from a Greek word which was plakenta with a K, okay, which basically means cake in Greece. On Greek, so chances are it was placenta. You're not going to be eating placenta. Okay, I did learn Latin at school, but I have to say I don't recall any sort of query about how you pronounce your C's. But anyway, there was always a bit of one about me V's. My Latin teacher used to always pronounce V's as W's. So the old classic Julius Caesar, Veni Vidi Vici, he used to always say Veni Vidi Vici. I'm never sure whether it was because he couldn't do his V's properly or whether that was because that's how he meant to pronounce it. Anyway, what we now do is we're now going to lay that into our dish. Now, remember, we want it bigger than the dish, because what we're now going to do is start assembling our cake. So we take a tractor, actually I'm going to use one of the smaller ones, and we lay that in there, and then, oh, you see the steam coming up that one? We're just going to lightly brush the surface of that one with some oil. And then we're going to take some of our cheese and we're going to spread that on top. Take another tractor, lay it on top, take some oil, spread it, and we're going to keep doing that, build up layers until we either run out of cheese or we run out of tractor. So I've run out of tractor. My final tractor goes on top. Give it a little bit of a brush with some oil, and then what we're going to do is we're going to fold up the outside of the crust to wrap it all over the cheesecake. Now it doesn't matter if there's a hole in the middle, right? But we're just going to put that like that. Now you'll need the oven on at about 150. Let me just double check. Quite there. And that's going to go in there, and it's going to probably take at least 60 minutes. Okay, it might want to be a little bit longer. Okay, excuse me, but basically that's going off to cook. So in it goes, and I'll see you possibly in about an hour. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, put a lid over it. Okay, I've just put a lid over it, obviously because we want it all to cook through. If we leave it that long in there without a lid on it, pastry's all going to get hard and whatever. So I've put a lid on. See you in an hour. So here is our final Roman honey cheesecake. Okay, now when I first brought it out the oven, it's quite moist around the outside, so I suspect the pastry at the bottom is a little bit soggy. Also, I brushed it all over with some honey. Okay, so it's quite, as you can possibly hear, this outer crust is quite hard, but then again it is just a flour and water crust. So let's see if I can get a chunk of this out. Probably will fall to bits when I'm trying to scoop it out, but I thought you might appreciate seeing what it's like. Actually, it came out not too badly. Get that little bit out of there. So, obviously we don't want to eat the bay leaves, so just be careful of them. But there you go. I mean, it's fallen apart a little bit, but you can see the sort of the layers in it. So go. That was a bit of pastry from around the outside, a bit soggy. I don't know if I'll pop on it. Don't think so. Internally, I wouldn't say you get an awful lot of sweetness. Definitely got cheese. The tractor isn't quite as nutty, if you like, as it was when we had it as spelt on its own. But it was a very popular sweet dessert. I think perhaps this could do with more honey. So I wouldn't say it's overly sweet. Okay, the tractor on the top is obviously harder and crunchier. Okay. I wonder what that would be like nicely chilled down. So when that's finished cooling off, it's still a little bit warm. Back in the fridge, and we'll try it another time when it's a bit colder. So there you go. The Roman placenta spelt cake.